Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick and this is MSFS Flight Plans, a place where we are all about taking cool planes to very cool places. And today's flight will be about as cool as it gets, both literally and figuratively. We are up in the Aleutian Islands, which is that chain that stretches all the way from Alaska over to Russia. And the reason why we're up here is, one, we've got some volcanoes. You can see one of them in the background there. And two, we need some very clear, very cold air to take a little test flight in the Hughes XF-11 by Flying Fries. This thing is that recon plane built from, I think in 1943 is when this thing was first launched. It was a prototype, and it's supposed to be able to get up to 44,000 feet, which, though not a record for piston planes, is definitely well beyond the typical envelope. I think the record's like 69,000, which is just insane, but 44,000. And I've taken a few test flights, but haven't crossed over 40,000 yet, so we're going to see if we can actually get all the way up there. And boy, is it a struggle just to get that high. So since we're going to be going way, way higher than any other flight we've taken on this channel, I needed to find some natural landscape that would look much better from higher altitudes, which is precisely what we're going to have out here. And this thing is very, very difficult to fly, very, very difficult to land. It's difficult to start up, and it's just a lot of fun. So that being said, I'm going to try my best. I made some notes about some stuff we're going to see along the way, and I'm going to try to do a lot of narrating. But as you're going to see, this thing is going to require constant attention. It does have a GPS or a Garmin system you can put over here if you want to, but it doesn't have a GPS autopilot, so I figured we'd just leave these off. But it does have heading hold, altitude hold, vertical speed hold, so we'll be doing some of that kind of stuff, but I'm just going to leave the map out just to improve our frame rates and get this kind of vintage look here. Okay, so I've got my checklist, which is 2 note cards long here, so just to give you an idea of what we're in for, and I've got some different camera angles set up here, so the first thing we're going to do is turn the battery on, which is that right there. I do have the GPUs turned on, which are outside the plane, and we'll have to stow all that stuff before we get going. So then the covers and chocks off. Chocks, covers off. Okay, that's good. Fuel valves open, and we're going to open all of these because we've got fuel in all the tanks, but we don't have the drop tanks. We're not going to need that much. And then fuel valves, prop and mixture to full. All right, we can do that. And it's called fine. You see this lever down here next to me? We have to put on the fine setting. Very good to go. And then the left and right fuel pumps on. We're actually going to put all of them on since we do have fuel in the center tank. So those 3 are on, and then get the mags going. Okay, so those are on both. And now we're going to open up the cowl flaps, but let me get up here for just a minute because it is animated on both engines. Ready? Check this out. Incredible. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to hit the primer, then the starter, and then give it just a little bit of throttle, and it should be good to go. So let's do that for the left engine. Look at that. Nice and smoky and everything. Just what we want to see. All right, do the right engine. Okay, let's jump back down here again because now we got to start shutting a few things off. So left and right alternator, those need to go on. Avionics on. And my external console just lit up, so that means that's working. That's great. So GPU off. And then this will stow the GPU. And then the access ladder, put that away, and then the access door, shut that. And then we'll turn the pressurization on, but I think that's on by default. Yes, it is. And you don't need to set any altitudes or anything. It's automated in this plane. I don't know if it is in real life, but I think they just simplified it to make it automated. Okay, so we're pretty good. So let me tell you a couple different things, and then we'll look at the Google Maps. So one of the things with this plane that you have to watch constantly is the mixture. And you will see that they do have an exhaust gas temperature gauge, these over here. But in the manual it said just try to keep this one, the fuel flow, gallons per minute, as vertical as you possibly can. And once we get up, it's not like typical GA planes where maybe you touch it when you get over 3,000 feet, maybe touch it when you stabilize. We're going to be having to fiddle with this constantly. And as we cruise up, and this thing will climb at least through 20,000 feet at 4,500 feet a minute. So it's going to start moving around a lot. And that's the thing we're really going to have to keep our eyes on. And then we'll kind of have to watch the manifold pressure because that's going to change, of course, as we increase in altitude. So we're going to try to do all that, and if you look out the windows, you'll see the field of view is not great, but check out what's on the front of this thing. Yeah, this is a recon plane, so we're going to get an incredible view from up here. So when I'm not fiddling around with all the controls, we'll jump up here occasionally and look at some of the sights, but we're probably going to be spending most of our time back here. Okay, so let's look at the Google map real quick. So there's Alaska, there's Russia over here, and here's the Aleutian Islands that are stretching all the way across the Bering Sea down here. And we're going to be starting right in the middle here from Nikolski airfield, and we're going to come out this way, start picking up some altitude. We're going to need a lot of room to try to get 44,000 feet. Come across this island right here, which is Island, and we got a volcano here, a massive, beautiful volcano here, which is going to look great from way up in the air. There's an old abandoned airfield down here, which is really cool. And then we're going to come across this Unalaska island, which is a funny name for an island. This way, they got a volcano here, but it's kind of washed out from the satellite image. There's so much snow on there, it's kind of hard to see the crater on that one. We'll be able to see it for the rest of these. That one looked really, really white last time we were over it, so we'll take another look. It's only 4 a.m. out here, and the sun's just coming up, so I'm hoping the shadows will help a little bit with that. And then our airport is way down here on this little island, which, just make a mental note of this, because I'm going to mention it again. Amaknak Island. This thing right here is where we're landing, and the airport's probably right about there. And it's not connected to Unalaska, which I will bring back to your attention as we're coming in. So that's our trip, and it says it could take 52 minutes in the air, but we've got a nice tailwind. It's 4 knots now, but it'll probably be up to 15 or so once we get up in the air. And this is not the live weather because it is overcast right now. Okay, that's everything I felt like we need to get out of the way before we got going. So let's go ahead. The add-ons that we've got, one for this airport, one that we're coming into, both freeware, although there is a payware for the one we're coming into as well, but the freeware looks really good. And then I've got the ORBX Alaska Mesh, which is also payware, but not real expensive. And I think it does a pretty good job because some of these mountains were kind of rounded off before I put that in there. So this airport we're leaving from is called Nikolski Air Station, built in 1958 as part of a U.S. military installation out here during the Cold War. I guess we had a bunch of early warning radar stations out on these islands, and I think the add-on added that little radar dish over there. You see it to the right? And so that kind of stuff on these islands is probably why most of these little strips got out here. But they decommissioned this one in 1969 and finally pulled all the old structures down in 2000. And the most recent activity data I could find for this airport said they had 160 people roll through here in 2010. So I imagine you don't have to wait too long in the TSA check line if you're departing from this location. I know how much everybody's looking forward to having someone look under your clothes that you don't know. Isn't it incredible that we've reached the point where we walk through there and willingly let someone take a look at us without any clothes on that we don't even know, just to catch that flight? What does the world come to? That's cool. I'm pretty sure that wasn't out there before. So that's a nice little touch. And I don't know if you saw it, but there's like a wrecked DC-3 now at the other end of the runway with half the wing like stuck in the ground. So that was pretty cool. And in case you couldn't tell, this runway is very short and skinny. It's just over 3,000 feet long and only 63 feet wide, but it does have a downhill grade the direction that we'll be taking off, so that'll help. And I tried coming the other way and landing here the first time, and because this thing is so hard to land, it was a nightmare, especially because it was so skinny, so short. It doesn't need a lot of room to stop, but it's really hard to control coming in. And unlike this one, the airport we're coming into has mountains on both ends of it, so that'll be fun. Trying to get that squared away. Okay, so our takeoff checks. Baro check, flaps at 10%, and here's our flap gauge over here. So just a couple things I'll be looking at. I'm going to set an initial heading that we'll do a heading lock for once we get up, and then we'll just be adjusting our heading as we go along, so I don't have to keep trying to stay on track and fiddle with the controls and narrate. Airspeed is what it is. Here's our artificial horizon, altitude over here, vertical speed meter here. We won't be watching this stuff too much, although we will close our cowl flaps when we get up because it's really, really cold out here. There's our outside air temperature, so it's below freezing already, so we need to get that shut, which means we need to get our anti-ice systems on because they got the high-level cloud setting, and we will be going above those clouds probably if we get all the way up there. And over here, here's our fuel pressure, which is going to stay pretty much up. I didn't see that move at all, but this one is going to be moving like crazy. Manifold pressure here, and then our RPMs over here. So this is the left engine, this is the right engine, just in case you want to follow along with what I'm looking at home. All right, anti-ice on. The takeoff, there's a takeoff setting for the trims. You can see it's that notch right there, but this thing will nose up so hard that I just pulled it back a little bit from neutral. Otherwise, it almost goes vertical, which is not good. All right, takeoff lights, and our rotate speed is going to be 130. This thing's going to get there really, really quick, and within like 3 seconds, it'll be up to 200 knots, and you're supposed to have the gears and flaps up by 200. So as soon as we come up, gears will come up, flaps will come up, and then we'll start trying to get on our heading and lock in the vertical speed. Our initial climb will be at 4,500 feet per minute, and you can see the thing's going to get pegged at 4,000, so I'm setting it on our external hardware. And if you want to try to manually control the autopilot, all the controls are down there, so you can see why I'm going to use the external hardware for that. Okay, I'm ready. You guys ready? And by the way, this is the 5th time I've tried to record this flight. That's how difficult this is. So keep your fingers crossed for me. If you're a praying person, pray now. All right, here we go. Watch that airspeed. All right, 120, 130, 140, pull back on the yoke, up we go. Gears up, flaps up, we're already at 200. And I'll go ahead and turn the landing lights off now while I'm thinking about it. All right, so initial heading is going to be 263 degrees. So we'll go ahead and set that and do a heading hold. I should have done that before we took off, but that's fine. 263, autopilot on, heading hold, vertical speed, and we'll climb at 4,500 feet a minute. And I'm going to go ahead and set our altitude for 44,000 feet. I don't know why I just adjusted that back down. Oh, because I just crossed over altitude, that's why. Alright, I'm doing all these out of sequence, which is why it's not behaving just as I would prefer, so I'm still twisting. 20,000. 25,000. Man, it's not very often I have to twist this altitude marker much. Okay, 37,000, 39, 44,000 feet. But it's going to just barely be creeping up there, so it's not like we're going to slam into that. Okay. Alright, so that island that we left from is called Umnak, and it's part of a chain collectively referred to as the Fox Islands, which is just the ones in the nearest vicinity, but all of these are still considered part of the Aleutian chain. But this one is the third largest in the archipelago, home to an absolutely stunning volcano that we're going to see in a minute. 3 of them. One of them is really impressive. And as of 2010, the population of this entire 686 square mile island was just 18 people. Just pulling my manifold pressure back, and the RPM is back now. 18 people. Can you imagine that? Probably kind of nice, until you need a doctor or some toilet paper. Alright, our airspeed's a little high, but man, we are just... look at that. 4,500 feet a minute, and our airspeed is almost getting into the overspeed range. Crazy. Alright, so we'll pull the mixture back a little bit now. Doesn't seem to be moving the needle yet, but it sure will once we get over about 10,000 feet. Give a little more manifold pressure, that's going to steadily fall. And then all of a sudden, at around 18,000 feet, it'll just peg itself again, and the fuel flow will also jump up, so I'm not sure what happens at 18,000 feet. But people have been hanging around back at that island for quite a while. Let me go ahead and adjust our heading, and I'll tell you about how long they've been hanging out down there. So our heading is now going to be 170. And I kind of overshot our turn, so I'm going to set it at about 160 and come back towards our second turning point. They found artifacts down there dating back roughly 8,400 years. And in the 1750s, Russian fur traders worked out some business agreement with the indigenous locals, but all that fell apart a few years later. So the fur traders rolled back through and killed everybody. And after that, nobody cared much about this place till World War II, during which time the U.S. started building bases disguised as fish packing plants, hiding them from the Japanese, an operation which eventually grew to a population of 4,000 soldiers on the island. And we'll see the bigger base that they had on the other end of the island. But once that was over, they did the whole Cold War bit out here with the radar stations, and now it's once again mostly desolate and abandoned, except for aliens, of course. And you know that has got to be a perfect habitat for those guys. Alright, so our fuel flow is falling now, pulling that mixture back a little bit, trying to keep that as vertical as possible. And I will start decreasing our airspeed. The best climb rate is 120 knots, so we got plenty of room with that. So far, so good. And once we kind of get stabilized on this next turn, I'll hop in the front bubble there and we'll take a look at some of these volcanoes down here. But I'll go ahead and tell you about them before we do that. Pull that mixture back some more. Now you just got to really babysit that mixture. Look how much that's moving. I just pulled that back about 1 millimeter. And we'll go ahead and bring that throttle all the way up now. So we got wide open throttle, and you can see it's nowhere close to being in the red for the manifold pressure. But then at 18,000, it's going to jump. So we're coming up to 17,000 now. And our next heading is going to be 180. Oh, sorry, just regular old 80. And I'll go ahead and turn to that now, because it's going to be a wide turn, because we're moving pretty quick. 80. Okay. Alright, you see that jump? Look at our manifold pressure. So I got to pull that back again now for some reason. And adjust the mixture a little bit. And if you let that mixture fall too low, the engine's going to cut off. So you really got to watch that. So these volcanoes we're going to see in a minute. The first one is called Mount Vezvidov, and that is an active stratovolcano that last erupted in 1957. And it's also the highest peak on the island, reaching up to just over 7,000 feet. And directly east of that one is Mount Reshashoni, also a stratovolcano, and at some point that one blew its northern flank off. And I'm not sure if that's classified as dormant or extinct, but the last time they think that erupted was about 3,000 years ago. So there's Vezvidov there, and then there's the one that blew the whole half of itself off over here. We'll take a nice look at those from our bubble in just a few minutes. Look at that fuel flow. Man, just got to keep right on top of it. Okay, our airspeed's starting to come down now, so I'm going to drop this to 3,500 feet a minute. Just so we don't wind up with a nose-up situation and go into a stall while we're hanging out in the bubble. And dropping the mixture a little bit more. And there's going to be a little bay along the coast just to the north of Reshishoni, which is the one that blew half of itself away, that's known as Geyser Bight Geothermal Area, and that's B-I-G-H-T. I'm not sure what that means. But it's got 5 active geysers down there, which are the only ones in the state of Alaska. But I don't think any of them are Old Faithful style. They seem to be pretty small. Okay, let me adjust the mixture one more time, and then we'll climb up in the front. Airspeed's looking good. And now we're at 25,000 feet. All right, here we go. Look at that. Incredible. Wow. I mean, we just never get this high on this channel. This is so cool. There's our airstrip that we took off from right down there. Look at that. All right, so we'll come over here, take a better look at this. In fact, we're going to turn about to, well, we're going to turn to 34 degrees in a minute, which will take us right over the edge of this island. It should, which will give us a great look at the best of these big open craters. And then the airbase, we should be able to see the old abandoned one right down here. So we can look forward to that. But let me hop back here and make sure we're doing well with this. Bring the mixture back up some more. Bring it down. Bring the needle up. And we're still at 160 knots, climbing at 3,500 feet a minute. And coming up on 28,000 feet. This is crazy, isn't it? And we're coming up on the upper cloud ceiling here. Not very often we get to fly above the high-level clouds either. Hoping this doesn't obscure too much. Once we get above about 35,000, there's not much more we have to do with the mixture. It's going to be our airspeed that we'll be most concerned with. And it starts to drop pretty quick too. Alright, so here comes 30,000 feet. Oh, we need to shut our cow flaps, so we're going to freeze this thing out. There we go. Warm this baby up some. Alright, play with the mixture a little bit more. No, that's not good. We don't want it going down. We want it going up. Okay, so now we're going to turn to that 34 degree heading. And I'm going to bring our climb rate down to 2,500. And I'm going to make it a 30 degree heading because I overshot it a little bit. So right now we've got an 8 knot crosswind coming from 293 degrees. So a little bit north-northwest. Alright, we'll be on this heading for a while. I just want to make sure we get lined up pretty well to take a good look at this. Point in the right direction. So look at that. The whole side of this thing got completely blown off. So about 7,000 feet, that's the highest one on this island, and probably the highest one that we're going to see. We'll see another big one on that big island near where we're coming into. And right down in here, once we get over it, we'll climb up in the nose. I'll show you where that little geyser field is. Alright, coming up on 33,000 feet. And it looks like the mixture adjustments aren't doing much anymore. So that's good. One less thing we have to really mess with. Airspeed's looking good, and we should be able to take it at 1,000 feet a minute all the way through 40,000, but again, I haven't been to 44 yet, so we'll see how that goes. And let's climb back up in the front here. So the big volcano on the very end is called Mount Okmok, and if it had water, it would just look like Crater Lake out in Oregon. It's about the same diameter, about 6 miles across. So if you're wondering what the inside of... Oh, we're still a good ways away from that. We're just going so slow. But if you're wondering what the bottom of Crater Lake looks like, it probably looks a lot like this. Okay, so here is where all the geysers are right here. There's kind of like a little washout area right here. It gets really shallow. There's a little bay right there. That's where the geysers are. And then there again, there's that mountain that everything blew off of. 18 people on this whole island. And so it's not, this is one whole island. This whole area up here, and there's a little isthmus there that kind of connects it down here. Looks incredible. Alright, let's hop back up here. We'll jump in the front when we look at Okmok. Check our mixture again. Airspeed's looking good. Yep, so the mixture's about where it wants to be. Coming up on 36,000 feet. And I'm going to bring our climb rate to 1,500 feet a minute. Because all of a sudden it'll just stop climbing, and then our airspeed's going to drop, and we're going to be in big trouble. Alright, everything's looking good. Everything is looking good. And I'm going to bring our heading over just a little bit because we're slightly off track, so I'm going to make it 20 degrees for now. We can come back to the right if we need to, because I want to get a really good view of this other big volcano. But unlike that first two, Occomock is a shield volcano, which is the giant one that we'll see on the last part of this island, the northeasternmost portion of it. And you know it's a shield volcano because if it had any flanks, what little flanks you can see are pretty shallow. And the first eruption of that one was believed to have occurred during the Pleistocene era around 2 million years ago, and the blast that took the top off this thing probably happened around 48 BC. And as you're going to see, it was obviously not a small one. It was so massive, in fact, that scientists think it caused a volcanic winter that changed the course of human history all the way down in Europe, so I guess it did some crop damage and things like that. Not good. Alright, coming up on 38,000. Airspeed still looks good. Taking a look at our mixture. That's looking good. Bring that up as high as it'll go. Alright, let's climb back up in our bubble for just a minute. After I click over here. Now you can really see how much of that thing got blown off. A big chunk of it. And there's where the geyser field is. I think they said the highest one is like 15 meters would have been probably 15 feet high, so they're all pretty shallow. And it didn't say how high the fountains get on them, or how regular they are. Well, look at this. I didn't notice that before. It looks like they might have another little mini volcano right there. And here's the big one up here, and this one looks amazing. Man, the high-level clouds are going to make it look a little bit hazy. It should still look pretty good right over the top of it. All right, let's get our heading back to 36, let's say. I'm trying to come over this end of this island over here because we will be able to see the landing strips anyway from that airbase. But look at this. So that's about 6 miles all the way across that thing there. Incredible. Alright, let's check our airspeed. We're doing alright. And we're coming up on 40,000. Check our mixture. Yep. Okay, that's looking good. We got full throttles. No, we don't. We had to back it down from the other thing, so that'll help with our climbing a little bit. And now from here all the way up to 44,000, I'm going to bring it down to 1,000 feet a minute. And take our heading right on 34 because we're right on our line for a little NavMap, which I have open on our left-hand screen. And I think we'll be safe from here, so we can climb back up front without worrying about that. We'll just come back to see how close we are to 44,000 because I don't want to go over it. I don't know what happens when we do that, but if I blow another flight, it's just going to be a real bummer. Look at that. That looks really good. I should have just made it clear skies. Man, I thought that the clouds wouldn't be so heavy because on the ground, when you're looking up at the high-level clouds, they don't look like they're very thick, but you get the gist of it. And man, the live weather, let's see, the first test flight I took was 2 nights ago. There was over 100 knot tailwinds coming down to the airport that we left from. I landed at that one the first time. But on the ground, it was about 12 knots. Up at 30,000 feet, it was already up over 100 knots. It was whipping. And you notice this plane oscillates quite a bit like the Tomahawk, which is what we took on that Key West flight. So good thing I had so much oscillation practice. And it does the same thing when you're landing too, which is very, very challenging. Look at that thing. That is amazing. And you can see they got all kinds of little volcanoes in there like that. So you remember, if you recall that flight out to Crater Lake, they got little Wizard Island there, which is one of these vents that just got big enough that it's sticking up over the water, and about the same vicinity as this one was too. That would have been on the western side of it, I guess. But the rims of this one, again, I haven't seen it from close up, but the internal rims of that look better than Crater Lake did, because you might recall some of that was a little bit stretchy. We landed right in the middle of that, which was a cool flight if you haven't seen it yet. All right, here's that airfield, right down here. So this is called Cape Field at Fort Glenn, and it was also built up during World War II. This thing is just rocking like crazy. And it's now a National Historic Landmark. They left it open for a little while after the war as a refueling stop for planes heading over to Japan. So there's the strips right there. 1 and 2, and then there's 3. And down here, when we see the satellite map, you can still see that they left all the little embankments that were around the buildings. But unlike the place that we left from, they just took all the explosive and toxic stuff out of here and left everything else. So it is a true ghost town, which would probably be a lot of fun to explore. We could become the 19th person on the island. All right, let's climb back up here. Airspeed's looking good, coming up on 43,000 feet. So we'll take one more peek to see how good of a look we can get at that fort, and then we'll start coming down. So we've only got 1,000 feet to go, and our airspeed's going to be fine. Check the mixture one more time. Yep, that's not moving when I move it, so that's good. We don't want it to go down, that's for sure. Alright, one more trip to the bubble, and then we'll start coming down. And once we get past this volcano, we're going to take a turn over to the northeast. Yeah, there you go. You can see it now better. And I bet you, if we were closer, I bet you could see all the little embankments they got. They're all over the place around here. And in real life, it looks like there's not even any asphalt left on these strips, and I don't think you can select this in the sim either. But I think there was an add-on for it, as a matter of fact, so maybe if you throw that in, you could select it. But now they look like they're just all grass. That's cool, huh? Really cool. And there's Unalaska Island, so we're going to cut across this way here in just a second. And let's get ready to peek out with this thing. Coming up on 44,000, we're going to do it. So we'll just get our vertical speed to flatline once we get up there. And then we still got a little bit of bandwidth with our airspeed. I wonder how high we could take this. But we got to get back down, maybe for another flight. Alright, we should pick up some airspeed once we flatten out here. Let's get an external shot. Awesome. Listen to the sound of those engines, too. Incredible. Look at it just bucking up and down. Alright. Oh, it's so close. Look, it just isn't going to go any further. It's just barely getting up there. Check our barrel again, just to make sure we didn't overshoot it. Oh yeah, it doesn't want to go. Look at that. It won't go any further. Alright, let's just flatten out. Okay, so now we got to change course here to a heading of 77 degrees. And we'll start coming down. And we're going to come down at 4,500 feet a minute because we have to. We'll wind up over in Canada somewhere if we come down at a normal pace. And we really don't need to pull the throttles back because the air is just so thin up here, I don't think it's going to rip our wings off. So vertical speed going down at negative 4,500 feet a minute. Alright, so our destination altitude, we're going to take it all the way down to 2,500 feet because that's what we need to be able to clear the mountains by the airport. So let me go ahead and set that out now, and since I crossed back over our altitude, it stopped our descent, which we'll get back to in just a second. And 13,000 feet. You know what, just to be safe, I'm going to do 3,000. I felt like I was cutting it a little bit close last time. Alright, 3,000 feet, and get back to that descent rate, 4,500. Okay. We're moving. And we're right on course. That's great. Alright, so now we are flying across the middle of Unalaska Island, which I think is, maybe even the word Alaska is one of the indigenous words. I didn't get to see what that actually meant, but they thought it was kind of a blend of Russian and whatever the original languages were out here. And there's the big volcano, which again, that one's just under 7,000 feet, so not quite as tall, and in a minute I'll get down to where that is in my notes. But this one's quite a bit larger than Unnak, the one we left from, the island we left from. This one's over 1,000 square miles and slightly more populated with around 1,700 residents as of the 2000 census. And it's also hosted human inhabitants for roughly 2,000 years longer than that last place, but I'm going to wager a guess that the first people hit these islands around the same time. I can't imagine there'd be a 2,000-year gap between crossing that little channel between these islands. They probably just haven't found the evidence to back that up yet. Alright, just watching that mix. Now we can start probably bringing it up a little bit. And I need to keep an eye on the manifold pressure and just watch our airspeed as we come down into some thicker air. And our ground speed right now is 329 knots. We've got an 8-knot wind coming from 292. And if you saw our majestic Moana's flight over in Hawaii, where we got to see some more huge volcanoes, we got to hear the story of Captain James Cook and saw the place where he was bludgeoned to death along the coast down there. And if you heard that whole story, saw that flight, you would have heard the whole story. This is the island that he had stopped at right before heading back to Hawaii to get his beat down. And for all you meteorology buffs, on December 31st of 2020, a storm rolled over this island with a pressure of 924.8 millibars, setting the record for the lowest non-tropical reading ever recorded in the U.S. So let's see, here's where we're going to land at. This is it over here. So we're going to come around this way, come across this island, come across this one, and it said that the ground level, the highest ground level we'll cross over is around 2,000 feet, so we should be okay at 3,000 feet. Check our bear again as we're cruising along. Everything's just fine there. Give it some more mixture. And that's too much. All right. My right engine dropped pretty quick there. All right, so that volcano over there is called Makushin, and it's considered the most active in Alaska, with the last eruption occurring in 1995. And again, that one's just short of 7,000 feet, so not quite as tall as the first one we saw back on Umnak. And I don't know if that one blew itself apart or what, but that doesn't look like it's getting close to 7,000 feet unless it just climbs a lot from here. But again, the satellite coverage, even on the Google Maps, was pretty bad, and I think it just got totally washed out by the glare from the snow on top of that thing. But you think they're not taking elevation readings from visual spectrum stuff. They probably use radar pings or lasers or something, so that just doesn't seem quite right to me, but that's it over there. Alright, airspeed's starting to pick up. Manifold pressure still looking good. And we are falling, so we're coming under 28,000 feet right now. Ground speed 334 knots. Wind still from 292 at 8 knots. And I may have to slow us down a little bit here, or we're going to overshoot that before we get down. Well, maybe not. We'll just see how we do. We'll see how we do. And we're right on our course, so that's fantastic. So the airport we're coming into is called Unalaska Airport, even though it's not on Unalaska Island. It's also known as Tom Madsen Airport and Dutch Harbor Airport. And the island where we'll find all three of those airports is called Amaknak. That's what that little island's called. And I don't know if we'll be able to tell from our approach angle or not, but that thing is only separated at its narrowest part from this big island here by about 200 feet. And I've got a fun fact for you guys. The total land area of Amaknak, which is where the airport is just over 3 square miles. But its population of around 4,700 people makes it the most populous of all of the islands in the entire Aleutian chain. Can you believe that? Apparently there's a big fishing industry down there, so that's probably why anyone is up here at all. Alright, mix is looking good. Mix is looking good. Bring that right up. That goes right up. Very good. We'll take it right to where it starts coming down. Very good. And now our manifold pressure is way up too high. So there we go. We'll pull that back some, and airspeed's starting to pick up, so I need to keep an eye on that. But this place is definitely a happening spot during World War II. Dutch Harbor, which is the place where we're landing, had a big Navy base that was attacked by planes from 2 Japanese carriers in June of 1942. And apparently they had a little trouble finding the place, and most of the planes either had to ditch in the ocean or just go back to the carriers, so they came back a couple days later and worked it over, blowing up a bunch of oil tanks, a hospital, and the only ship they hit was a barrack ship that was already beached. So they launched a bunch of U.S. fighters to chase them down, and they found the carriers. Or I don't know if they did find the carriers. I don't think they were able to damage them enough to put them out of commission, but they did follow them back for a little ways. Boy, that is beautiful, isn't it? And now that we got our nose pointed down, we can see everything better. Alright, so we're getting ready to take our turn here, and I'm going to go ahead and slow down a little bit. I don't know how much longer we'll be able to keep going down at 4,500 feet a minute. Give it a little bit more mixture. That looks good. Alright, so we're going to turn to a heading of 42 degrees. Not quite yet, though. Pretty soon. Alright, all my gear speeds and flap speeds are over here, so we got that. So the gear's going to come down at 160. Also, first notch of flaps at 160, and it is hard to get this thing down to 160. And then second notch of flaps 140, third notch at 130, and our approach speed is going to be around 130. And we can come in pretty hot with this, or it'll just start to fall out of the sky, even though it won't nose down. So we're going to come in hot, plop it down there, and then it'll slow down pretty quick. This runway is a little over 5,000 feet, I think, so it's not real huge. Alright, 47 degrees. And we're coming up on 13,000 feet. I mean, these islands don't look super jagged. They're probably more jagged than that in real life, but it does look better with the mesh pack included. They seem to be really smoothed out before. Alright, we're going to kind of lose sight of the place that we're going to be landing at here in just a minute. But we'll cut across these, and then it'll pop up right around the corner of some mountains. So we're going to have to kind of do an S that's going to look like this to get into the runway. And it's going to be tight and quick. All right, coming up on 10,000 feet. And we really need to keep coming down at 4,500 or we're just not going to get down enough. We got to get to 3,000 before we cross over. I think it's the second set of mountains. Yeah, so this one here, we got to be at 3,000. I think we'll be fine. And we're a little off course, so I'm going to bring it over to 40 degrees. And I guess when I set up the wind speed, it doesn't... Well, now it's down to 7 knots. Okay, it's changing a little bit. And we'll probably get some updrafts coming over these mountains because it is coming from the other side. Alright, watching that airspeed. I'm going to pull the throttles back some more. Do a little bit more mixture. That's looking good. Alright, so we're coming up on 6,500 feet. Looking over a little NavMap here. So our next and final heading, the runway heading, is going to be 307 degrees, and we probably won't nail it because I got to try to time that just right, but we'll correct. I'll take control from the autopilot once we get over these mountains here. Airspeed's looking good. Everything's looking good. Let's go ahead and get our cowl flaps back open. I just love that. I don't know why I like it so much, but boy, do I like it. All right, we're going to get our good landing lights on, too, since we're under 10,000 feet. All right, everything's looking good. Everything's looking good. Well, what's going on here with our vertical speed? It's not wanting to descend that fast anymore. Let me check our... Yep, it should be... There we go. I'm going to just go down at 3,000 feet a minute from here. Check our barrel again. And now we're holding at 3,000 feet. Alright. Okay, so we're going to make this turn, come over the cross on top of these things, and we can go ahead and pick our airspeed up again now a little bit, give it some throttle. And now it'll be easier to adjust our mixture. And it looks like we're in pretty good shape with that too. And once we hit these first mountains, then we're going to have to try to start slowing down. Boy, I hope we're high enough. That's going to be cutting it close. We're about to find out. So we probably have, I don't know, another 5 miles before we take that last turn. On to heading 307. I'd crawl back up in the front, but why the heck would we do that now? Yeah, having the sun down this low helps. Again, it's probably 4:30 a.m. now. Because there is a little bit of that stretching on some of these cliffs here. You know how that goes. What a beautiful area, though. This was really just perfect for this plane. So I picked this up. I've been wanting to get it forever, but there was just nothing we could do on this channel on a plane like this, but this really just takes the cake. And to try to max it out, which we definitely did. We hit 44,000. I bet if it was any warmer out, we probably couldn't have done it. Having real cold air probably helped quite a bit. Okay, so we'll give it about 1 more minute, then we'll do our heading switch to 307 degrees. Everything's still looking good. Manifold pressure is good. Fuel flow is looking good. Just check those mixtures real quick. Give it a little bit more. No problem. Whoa, our airspeed's way high, though. Look at that. Good grief. We're about to overspeed. The wings are about to rip off this thing. Man, I didn't have wide open throttles either. We got to slow way down. All right, so now let's turn to 307. I mean, how many planes do you have to just watch this much stuff and mess with the controls this much? This is a lot of fun. A lot of fun. All right, let's see how we make this turn. I'll slow down even a little bit more so it makes this turn a little bit tighter. See if we can hit it or not. And we'll pick it up a little bit. Yep, no problem. All right, well, good. I drew that right over this channel, and we're actually coming over the channel, so that's perfect. All right, so right over those next mountains, see that notch right in front of us? We got to cut through this thing, or maybe it's over on this side. We'll see here in just a second. I think we're going to have to cut through this, and the airport's going to be right on the other side of that. And it's the same thing from the other side. The mountains are a little further away, but they're higher, so you run into the same problem. You just have to come down a little bit more and a little bit faster. So it's about the same kind of aviating you have to do no matter which side you come in from. All right, once we get back over the water here, I'm going to start trying to get our airspeed down because we got to get down to 160 by the time we get to those mountains so we can get the gears and the flaps out. And then start really playing with the trim to keep this thing from descending too much. Look at how it's oscillating. So strange that we got 2 planes in a row that are doing that. Okay, so bringing the airspeed down now. And as soon as we hit 160, gears are going to come out and 1 notch of flaps will come down. Oh, we are lined up perfectly too. This is great. So if we're lined up perfectly, we're going to have to come over those mountains in front of us, not through that pass there. Alright, so I'm kind of thinking maybe coming through this one. I don't want to come around this way, it'll be too much of an S, so I'm just going to try to come right through that little notch right there. Alright, we'll go ahead and give it, well, not full props yet. We can probably give it full mixture though. Alright, 200 knots. And we got an 8 knot direct headwind now, which is perfect. Slow down a little bit more. And once I pull the gears out and the flaps, then I'm going to have to start giving it more throttle. Really having to finesse it. Here comes 160. Check the barrel one more time. Looking good. Alright, that's close enough. We got to get these things out. Alright, start slowing down, baby. Autopilot off. And nose down, because it'll nose up when the flaps out. Alright, so the runway is going to be over on this island. And you're going to see this add-on pack put a bunch of big tanker ships and stuff out here. It's really a nice add-on pack. Which, of course, will be included in the video description along with this exact flight plan if you want to take it just like we are. And the link to our Discord server. If you guys haven't checked that out, you need to hop on there. Join me for some group flights. We use the audio chat feature in there. I'll give updates about upcoming schedule, gear reviews, plane reviews, talking about whatever the heck we want. If you've got something you want to sell or buy, we got a little classified section on there. So join us on Discord. We got almost 40 members on there now, which is really, really cool. Alright, so 140 is going to be the next set of flaps. So that's good. We'll put those out. And look how that thing noses up. Alright, we got to get right down in this notch here. We got to get low. Let's hop outside the plane again real quick. Awesome. And then 130 will be the final notch of flaps. I'm going to trim down because it's wanting to pull that nose up. But it said do not come down more than 500 feet a minute, which we're already coming down more than that. I didn't tear. There's the runway. See it right over there? Just over that mountain? Alright, so slow down some more because I'm going to nose down. Ooh. Well, let's see. I didn't realize there was that little ledge there. Boy, this is a technical landing. Pretty cool. Trim the nose down some. But again, I want to be coming in at a pretty steep angle and then just flare it to burn off that speed at the end. And we do have a headwind, which will help. See that tanker over there by that big island? And off to our left, well, that's a transport ship. There'll be a tanker off to our left. And the airport looks pretty cool. They got some static planes and stuff down there. This thing is really nosing up. We must be getting some thermals over these mountains. But I don't want to trim down too much because right when we come over, it'll just nosedive. Alright, cut the throttle way back. We had our last notch of flaps in here. And it's going to nose up again once we pull those out. Alright, last notch of flaps. And now we need more throttle. And pitch down the nose. And it's kind of hard to see the runway here at the very last minute. So I'm keeping our airspeed up around 130 if I can. There's that tanker off to the left. And once we get down, we'll check out a little NavMap. There is some stuff that you'll probably want to see on there. Get a much better view of it. Alright, we got to give it some rudder here. Now we're coming in too fast. Don't want to hit the top of that tanker. This is a technical approach, isn't it? And you'll see it's just going to start sinking like a pancake here once we get to around 120. And now I've lost sight of the runway. Alright, oh gosh. Rudder, rudder. And cut the throttle, we'll just nosedive it down, then flare at the very last second, and it should be okay. Rudder. Flare. There we go. Not pretty, but we're down. And we're on the runway. Great. Alright, so I don't know if that's a taxiway or not, but we're going to pull off right there just to take a little look at this airport. Alright, flaps up. That thing stops quick, doesn't it? Real quick. Once those wheels are on the ground, you hardly have to give it any brakes. And it says you can do a reverse pitch on these things, which is interesting. Usually you only do that on turboprops. Okay. I'll pull right over here and just take a quick drive by the airport, see what we got parked down here, see if we have any planes. That hangar door does not open, unfortunately, but we wouldn't be able to squeeze this in anyway. Look at that. A topper on the pickup. That's exactly the kind of stuff you'd expect to see out here. But this is a neat little area, isn't it? Alright, we got a little multi-engine over there. And I saw that the 206 just came out today. I didn't see it in the marketplace, so I don't know who's selling that, but I know Av Angel's a huge fan of that plane, and she was the review that I saw. I didn't watch the review, but I saw she posted one. Alright, so we'll just park right over here. Shut her down and then take a look at a little NavMap. What a beautiful area. Just incredible. Alright, parking brake on. Feather the props. Mix down. And that should shut everything down for us. Alright, let's take a look at a little NavMap. See what we missed from 40,000 feet. Take the centering off. Okay, so there's where we left from. 18 people on this island. That is just mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. But at one time, there were 4,000 people before World War II. And I guess the Japanese never did find out that those fish packing plants were not fish packing plants either. So the spot where that... Oh, look, they really do have a plane stuck down there. Look at that. Is that a DC-3, though? We can't take the... that's interesting. I wonder what the story is with that. I thought they were just kind of throwing that in there as a little piece of eye candy, but that's nice. That's really cool. Well, they have a school down here? This must be where all 18 people live, because... I think they said they actually shut the school down a couple years ago, which pretty much is probably the death knell for anyone else still living down here, unless you don't have any kids. Look at this. Just a total jumbled mess here. I don't know what was going on, but in the sim, it looked a lot more correct than that, so that's cool. Here's the thing that got the side of it blown off, so that's Vesvet off there. And this is Mount Reshishoni, if that's how you say that. And here's the geyser field is. Can we see any little plumes coming up? I don't see any. Man, imagine just walking down there, being the only person on this island. Almost the only person. But look at this thing. That looked absolutely amazing in the sim. They even got that water right there. That is incredible. Let me measure that again real quick. I think it was like 5.8 miles from the widest point. Now 5.3, so maybe Crater Lake is a little bit bigger. That's about 5.8, so that's just a little bit smaller than Crater Lake, but that was a huge blast too. Imagine walking around that. That would be amazing. All right, so let's check this thing out, and we can take that airport off. So look at that. Well, there's a little bit of asphalt still down there, but look at all these things around here. They got the spots that were surrounding all the fish packing buildings. You can see them over here, and I think I saw a documentary of some guys doing some metal detecting down here. Looking for old unexploded ore. Look at that. They got some more down here too. And I think a lot of these are buildings. And I'm kind of wondering if they built the stuff up around the edge for maybe blowing snow protection as much as bullet protection. Because it would seem weird that they would put that around every single one of those, even all the way up here. Especially if they were trying to pull it off as a fish packing plant. So I think they had a couple bases. One of them was obviously an air base. And I think they may have had a little Navy station out here at some point too. But it doesn't look like any of those piers are still there. So that's Umnak Island there. And then here's Unalaska Island. Let's see if we can see that other little volcano. Well, that's what I thought was a volcano. That's an interesting looking feature, isn't it? It looked like it had a little bit more of a cone in the sim. Look at this. This is Makushin, and that's the thing that just did not look good, and it doesn't look good on the satellite map either, so you can tell it probably went up to a little bit more prominence, but it just kind of looks flat in the sim. Too much glare. So then we came around here and cut through our little channel into the most populated island in the entire Aleutian chain. This little thing right here. Incredible. So I don't know where the old military base was. Probably right around here, I'm guessing. Because I don't know where else you'd try to put an airstrip. And this is where they were launching all the planes from, so it was probably somewhere in this vicinity. But that looked really cool. Really, really cool flight. Very cool plane. A lot of awesome stuff to see. If I was going to do it again, unless the live weather was totally clear, I'd probably just go with a clear sky setting so you can see it even better than we could, because that haze was a little bit rough. But that's it. That's the 1943 Recon plane, which, by the way, Howard Hughes himself took up for a flight, crashed it out in Beverly Hills, lived through it, and then I think they built a second prototype that he flew up again, but they never placed any orders for it. But he was desperate to get somebody to buy that thing, but at least we got to fly it, which is awesome. And I cannot wait to see y'all again in the skies later.